everyone. We are going to talk about extemp speaking or extemporaneous speaking and how to do it, what it is, and kind of how to prepare for it. So, extemporaneous speaking is a speech event where you have 30 minutes to prepare it and you prepare an answer to a current event question. You are allowed to research this, but it is a 7-minute maximum speech where you pretty much give the answer to a question. So, in extemporaneous speaking, we have United States topics and international topics or world topics, and you get to choose which one of those you compete in. In Idaho, you will tell your draw room person or whoever gives you the topics if you want to do US or international. At national qualifiers or NSDA nationals, you will compete only against the people who do US or international. And we can put students in both of those events. So, for extemp, you practice by learning about current events, learning about other things to use as attention getters, and then you go to the tournament. At the tournament, you'll go to the draw room, which is the same for like radio or retold. So you go in a room and there's an adult, usually it's like a coach or an assistant coach who is in charge. You will tell them your code, who you are, and then they will mark you down, and then they will call up speakers by their speaker order. So they'll say first speakers. If you are first in your room, you will go up to the table. And then they will either show you your topics or give you a slip of paper. Now, you will choose only the US or the international ones based off of the event you chose. Now, some of the topics for United States include topics like, can the United States anticipate an increase in unionization in the coming decade? Or has the GOP of today distanced itself from the legacy of Ronald Reagan? Or what can social media companies do to limit the influence of AI on the 2024 election? Or what steps can the government take to reduce the amount of food that is going into landfills? So those are US topics. If you choose US extemp, you need to be aware of topics that are polarizing or too political. Now, by doing extemp, I would always suggest staying away from the really, really political topics because you don't know if your judge is a Republican, a Democrat, or somewhere in between. And so you never want to say something that they might disagree with personally or politically. And so it's always better to choose topics that are not those super political ones, like Donald Trump or Joe Biden, things like abortion. Those are things that I always say, don't choose those topics because you never know who your judge is going to be. But choosing topics that are less polarizing that you can find good research on for US topics. Now, if you choose international, anything else in the world is fair game. So at some tournaments, they will say round 1 is all about Africa topics and round 2 is all about Asia topics. So it'll give you a topic area. So some of the questions for international could be, will the war between Israel and Hamas bring down the Netanyahu government? Can Justin Trudeau overcome growing criticism to get reelected? Is China's economy facing the threat of deflation? Or what steps can India take to improve its efforts against air pollution? Or what would be necessary to revive a two-state solution for Israel and Palestine? So usually with international topics, you know less about them because there's a ton of topics that can be covered. So you have to spend a little bit of your prep time learning more about them. But a plus to international topics is your judge probably doesn't know as much about that topic, so you more get to teach them about it instead of have to kind of navigate around their personal or political opinions on something. So let's talk about the strategy and how to prepare for extemp. So before your tournament, you want to read up on the news. You want to know kind of general things that are going on. You want to know as much as you can about the world happenings or the US happenings so you can spend less of your prep time when you get a question learning about the topic and more of it preparing a great speech. Now, once you get to the tournament and you go in the draw room, the draw person is going to call you up and they will give you 3 topics, 3 US or 3 international. Within the first few seconds, you need to choose which topic you want. So pretty much you read through each and you go, let's choose that one. If you don't know anything about any of them, choose one and you'll learn about it. If you're doing domestic, read through them, make sure to cross out any ones that are super political or too personal, and choose from the others. You don't have to know about the topic to choose it because you'll have time to learn about it. But if you do know about the topic, those ones are pretty nice ones to choose. So you tell your draw person which topic you'll be using. So I'll say topic 1, topic 3. Or I might say, if they're listed A, B, C, D, E, I might say topic E or topic A. They will write it down and I go immediately back to my seat. As soon as I tell them my question, I start my timer. You have 30 minutes to prepare. Now, some tournaments in Idaho will cut this short a little bit. So they might say you have 25 minutes to prepare, and then you have 5 minutes to walk to your room, and then you start speaking right at 30 minutes. So you have a little less than 30 minutes. But at tournaments like nationals or national qualifier, you'll have 30 full minutes to prepare. So once you get your topic, you should divide up your time. So the first 10 minutes I would spend learning about your topic and brainstorming ideas. So you open up your computer, you go online, you Google stuff, you write notes, you want to learn as much as you can about the topic, and your topic again is listed as a question. Then you are going to, after that 10 minutes, you're going to start writing your speech. So if you don't know anything about the topic and it's an international topic, you might need a little bit more time to learn about your topic, but take no more than like 12 minutes. After you've brainstormed and gotten an initial viewpoint on the topic, then you're writing. And you're not writing this word for word. You're going to write it in an outline format with phrases. So I would get out a notebook or note cards and write down each piece. Now, the different pieces you want to include in a good extemp. Your introduction should start with an attention getter. And that should not just be you talking about the topic. A lot of people make that mistake in extemp. They'll start right about talking about the topic, and that is a fatal flaw because it doesn't grab our attention. Talk about a movie, a story, a book, some current event that's like fun or engaging, something you saw on social media. Then you're going to connect it to the topic and then give us your question. So one of my favorite extemps was from the national champion at NSDA Nationals 2 years ago. And she started by talking about this fun exchange on Twitter. She's giving this exchange, talking about what world leaders are tweeting. And then she connects it to what the Brazil leader says, and then connects it to a question about the Brazilian leader. So then she says, which leads us to today's question. Will blah, blah, blah do blah, blah, blah? That's where you state your question. So attention getter, connect it, give the question. Then you want to answer the question. So I'll say yes or no, or this is how. Now, there are close-ended questions and open-ended questions in extemp. Close-ended questions are usually asking for a yes or no. Open-ended questions are asking for reasons or steps we can take. So it's less of a yes or no and more of like a list or something. So you're going to give the question and then you're going to answer it right away. So I'd say, what can Americans do to keep unwanted things out of the landfill? The answer to this is there's actually 3 things we can do. This, and this. And those 3 things would be my 3 main points. If the answer is yes or no, so I'd say, which leads us to today's question, should the United States incarcerate less people to blah, blah, blah? And I'd say the answer to this question is yes, because reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, and those are my 3 main points. So after I list the titles of my 3 points, then I'm going to move physically in my speaker's diamond to my first point. In each of your points, you want to explain the point, you want to back it up with sources, and you want to say the sources with like the name of the source or the author name and the date. So I'd say CNN 2022 or CNN April 2023 if it's this year. And then you kind of keep citing sources, explaining your point, give impacts to your point, why this matters, what could this lead to. You're essentially analyzing and giving information to your judge to learn more about this point. You can talk about different people's opinions on the point, or like what people think about it. You could address misconceptions, but you want to like give an impact of why this matters at the end of the point. Then you would transition to your next point and do the same there and at the end. If you are new to extemp, and especially in Idaho, you could start off doing extemp by giving one source per point. But overall, you want to try to give multiple sources per point. Excellent extemp speakers can do like 3 sources per point, but that's a hard skill and it takes a lot of practice. Now, once your 3 points are done, you're going to physically move back to your middle and you're going to give your conclusion. You're going to say, so today we looked at the question, state the question, and we answered it by saying blank. There's your answer. You're going to give your 3 points, what your 3 reasons were, or your 3, whatever they are. And then you want to refer back to your attention-getting story or fun thing you did and wrap up your speech really nicely. There are some things on how to help you stand out in Extemp. First, having a really engaging attention getter where you can really draw your audience in. You can then use that to transition between your points and re-engage us, give us something that's not current events, and then you end your speech in a really engaging way as well. The second thing is using humor. So that same speaker that I was talking about earlier, she was really good at using humor, and her transitions between her points were jokes. And so they were really fun and lighthearted, and it kept us engaged instead of like getting bored by talking about politics. So she used a lot of really fun, appropriate jokes to transition in her speech. A tip is if you're brand new to Extemp, I would suggest using a note card during your speeches for the first 1 to 2 tournaments. This will help you to learn the event, get practice citing sources, following the correct structure, and then after that, don't use your note card. So if you use a note card in Extemp during your actual speech, you lose 1 rank. And so you don't want to lose a rank if possible, but for the first 2 tournaments, I'd highly suggest doing that so that you can practice correctly. Just realized we didn't finish talking about how to prepare. So after you have done your background, then you're going to write your speech in that outline structure that I just went over. And as soon as you've done that, do that for like 5 to 10 minutes, then you want to get up and practice. The longer you can practice, the more prepared you are going to be for your Extemp speech. So if you can practice for 10 to 15 minutes, and when you practice, you go stand up in front of a wall, face it as if it's your audience, and you're going to physically move, physically talk through your points. It's good because it helps you to practice how to say things or like how to insert your jokes or your attention getter so that it feels natural. And then you're using your notes as you practice so that that's helping you memorize your information. You're not memorizing it word for word, but you're memorizing what your sources are saying and where your sources go and kind of your overall structure. As soon as the draw person says your time is up, you're going to leave the draw room. You'll leave all your stuff there, and then you go to your room and you present. When you get to your room, you need to make sure your judge has the correct person there. You will tell them your question before you start, and you'll also say it in your introduction, and then you'll give your speech. Now, Extemp is a 7-minute speech with a 30-second grace period. Beginning people in Extemp, I would say your goal is to reach 5.5 minutes of speaking, but really people who succeed in Extemp are usually speaking from 6.5 to 7 minutes or going a teeny bit into the grace period. So you really want to hit that 6.5 to 7 minute mark in order to be the most successful in Extemp. If I'm comparing a 4-minute speech versus a 7-minute speech, 7-minute speech is just going to have a lot more context, a lot more content, and so I'm going to be ranking that higher usually. So that's overall the basics of Extemp. If you like current events, if you like learning about what's going on in the world and teaching people about it, if you like not doing the same thing over and over again, I would choose Extemp because we have different topics every round. You get to learn a lot about them and you get to teach people about those things. So that's Extemp. There's a lot of resources on speechanddebate.org for Extemp. They also have sample questions you can use to practice. Let me know if you have any questions.